1,000 lives a year. Most of their work happens miles offshore and is rarely seen, but one recent rescue was captured in its entirety on video. That was possible because the lifeboat, which is designed for the deep sea, had to operate this time in dangerously shallow water in a bay close to land and was watched by people on the island of St Mary's. It's the largest of the Isles of Scilly here, which are about 30 miles or so from the mainland. They have their fair share of high seas, but they're popular with experienced sailors from the mainland. In this reconstruction, the solo yachtsman Roger Adcock is played by an actor, but all the lifeboatmen are those who made the actual rescue that day.
My job on the lifeboat as acting mechanic is to make sure the boat is ready to run to sea 24 hours a day. Scilly is a very tranquil and peaceful place, but every now and again, all hell lets loose.
My responsibility as coxswain is the safety of the boat and the crew, making all the decisions when we go to sea. I'm a fisherman by trade, know the rocks around Scilly and the tide pretty well by now. Catches a lot of mainland people out used to sheltered waters and come out in the open sea. And the tide running against wind.
I'm the second coxswain. If Barry's away fishing, I'm the next bloke to cox the boat. I've always worked on boats one way or another. I find it very easy to paint them, having been sat on board of them for what feels like 24 hours a day for the last 15 years.
That day, Roger Adcock had sailed here alone.
I left Falmouth, I think it was a Thursday night, because I arrived here on the Friday morning. We'd been through a couple of rough spells, the boat was rolling. It went all through the night, then the weather started changing.
Roger found what he thought would be a safe anchorage in Porthcressa Bay.
I decided to stay there as against moving round to St Mary's, and that's how the trouble started.
When the yacht went there, it was probably a reasonable place to go because the wind seemed to be more up into the northeast. By the time it had swung and settled towards the south, there was no way for the boat to come out. It was just too bad.
I was just sitting down listening to the football, the radio all afternoon. There was rolling lots, so I just jammed myself in. I couldn't do much else.
Roger was a stranger to the place, and it all took over before he could do much about it.
All right, John?
Yeah, all right, Bernie. Yeah, there you are, Barry. You can see him there. Ain't looking very good, is it?
I don't like to look at it at all.
Barry, the lifeboat coxswain, and the honorary secretary, John Nichols, had to decide whether to attempt a rescue.
The situation is getting worse. We think we will launch immediately. Could you please activate my cruise bleepers right away, please? Thank you.
Falmouth Coast Guard, Roger out.
That's a lifeboat, Maroons. It's probably for that yacht.
Oh, there's nobody.
Camera.
Richie Christopher had been a lifeboatman himself and knew the yacht he began to film was in trouble.
Waves started breaking, the rollers were coming in. As long as it was rolling, there was no problem. It was just when the surf was breaking outside that the problem was, when we started taking water.
The grass is now becoming a little bit slippery, and that rain continues to drive it. And then this one back in with that.
What's the shout, Andy? The yacht in Porthcressa. Not expecting that. They did very nice of you. Right, guys. Here we go.
The crew launched a boarding boat to get them out to the lifeboat itself in a matter of seconds.
You felt practically useless, really, because There was nothing you could really do. You wanted to be doing something. You think, you know, if I could swim out there and help the guy, or if I could row out in a boat, you know, I mean, it was a horrible day and there was some nasty waves. So the only people that was going to help the man was the lifeboat crew.
So far, attempts to contact the yacht by radio had failed, and conditions were getting worse all the time. Roger himself now realised the seriousness of his position.
This wave came in, and then the second or third came over. Once it started breaking over the stern, the water was just coming in, and I couldn't get rid of it.
We headed straight off round to the bay. From outside looking in, it didn't look very nice at all. It was breaking virtually all the way in, and it was not a pretty sight.
I never realised how serious it was. I just didn't think anything would happen. I had to do something. I was trying to work out what really, and I noticed the lifeboat coming. I felt terrible when I saw the lifeboat. As if it was all your own fault, you shouldn't have been there. That was the worst I felt about the whole event, really. It is a guilt that I think you should look after yourself and not expect people to risk their lives just to get you out of the mess.
Distress yacht in Port Cressida Bay. This is St Mary's Lifeboat.
On channel 16, do you receive, over?
At last, Roger heard the radio.
Do you receive, over? This is St Mary's Lifeboat calling. Do you receive, over?
Lifeboat, this is yacht in Port Cressida Bay. Over. We're going to come and approach you now.
Would you please get up on deck ready to receive the line, over?
Okay, I'm coming up on deck now.
I was terribly worried about him because he was there on his own. He'd been sat there watching the situation worsen. I have a little boat of my own, and I know that the last thing you want to do is to call somebody if you got into trouble.
The sea was building up in sets of about sort of 3 or 4, maybe 5 big waves. And as the tide was dropping, so they were getting bigger and eventually started breaking right where the yacht was anchored. So the yacht was taking the full force of the waves hitting into the side of it. I just kept the camera fixed in one spot, trying to hold it still with the very gusty weather conditions.
The one thing that was on my mind the whole time once we entered into Port Cressida was the fact that it was very tight for the water depth. But our coxswain's a crabber, and they work in tight to rock, and he knew what he was doing from above.
Less than 5 feet of water and the lifeboat could hit the bottom.
You could feel or hear the gravel in the wash of the water going away from the propellers, which said, OK, we're pulling very close to the bottom.
The crew were now risking their lives.
Barry manoeuvred the boat in, and we decided to get a line onto the yacht, pull him out clear and sort him out in calmer water. Eventually, with 2 or 3 attempts, got the first heaving line into the cockpit of the yacht, which was very difficult to aim at.
Got it!
He was just pulling it into the boat. A batch of 3 waves came through and knocked the boat virtually on its side, and the heaving line must have parted out or something.
Line's gone, Barry.
I must have seen the waves coming, because several times I ducked down. I went in the water and could only assume I was under shock, because it seemed almost in slow motion. And again, it was just smooth and gradual. Surreal almost.
As Roger tried desperately to get out of the freezing water, the biggest wave yet caught the yacht. It started to break up.
I heard the crack of the mast go, and I thought, well, this is really turning very ugly now. And at the same time, the coxswain called down and said, let him know we're going to take him off.
Okay, we're going to take you off now. What?
The lifeboat now had to manoeuvre in closer than ever to the yacht. They hung protective fenders over the side in case the two boats actually collided. Roger was about to do something they hadn't expected.
I think they were going to take me off at the side, but I didn't realise that. I seemed to think when it came that I couldn't get up there. It looked awful big boat. It seemed to be 8-10 foot in the air. But then suddenly we seemed to be on the same level. The bow just came across in front of me. I just reached up and grabbed hold of it.
Jump, Joe, get him!
Roger was hanging between the boats and could have been crushed at any moment. The lifeboat crew had to act quickly.
The guide leapt up and took us all by surprise, really. Although we were expecting him to get on board, we weren't expecting it quite so quick.
When I saw them pull him up over the bow, I felt a, what do you call it, lump in the throat for a minute. Blokes don't cry, do they? Supposedly. This one does.
Only moments later, Roger's yacht was completely swamped by a series of powerful waves.
I realised how lucky I was. It was, I think, a minute after when I got out and when the boat went down. That was cut into a bit fine. It's just a build-up of waves here, that it's one after the other, and then she slowly goes over. And it's sickening now, seeing that. All the work you spent on it and everything, just all written off in 2 seconds. They were out raging in very shallow water. I think they had a metre under them, something like that. Boat should never have been there. But if it wasn't, of course, I'd be dead.
Right, one more. Here we go.
All the crew of the St Mary's lifeboat that day were given bravery awards for the rescue.
Joe, can you put your collar down? I can't see your face.
That was the idea, Frank.
Yeah, that was the idea, was it? Right, this way. Good. Oh, I gotta widen on. Right, and again. Nice one. Well done.
I expect to come back next year. I've got to, I think, to lay the ghost. Otherwise I'll never sail again.